It's the 1976 German Grand Prix, and Formula One's reigning world champion just slammed into an embankment at 174 miles per hour. His Ferrari burst into a fireball, and he's trapped in the middle of an 800-degree hellfire for an agonizing 55 seconds. Burnt horribly, lungs scorched, he's given his last rites. And 39 days later, he's back in a race car and nearly clinches the championship, losing by just 1 point. Who the is this guy, and how did he come back from what would have been a career-ending crash to win 2 more world championships and change Formula One into the sport that we know today? This is everything you need to know to get up to speed on Niki Lauda. Like a lot of F1 drivers, Niki Lauda was born into extreme wealth, the Austrian kind, which involves a knighted great-grandfather and probably some gold of questionable origin. But his ritzy industrialist family was never on board with his chosen career. Niki wanted a different life. He wanted speed, danger, he wanted glory, he wanted to be a race car driver, and he was willing to fight for it. Now, if that meant cutting off ties with his parents, so be it. It's harsh, I know, but the man was born to drive, and he would let nothing get in his way. Not even his mommy, and especially not even his daddy. Niki had a chill relationship with his uncle Heinz, though. And with Heinz's monetary assistance, 20-year-old Niki started racing in Formula V in 1969. Nice. What's Formula V? I'm about to tell you. It's a relatively cheap open-wheel racing class, basically whittled down Volkswagen Beetles. Tons of Formula One drivers get their start in Formula V. Now, this was a big step in the right direction, and Niki, he was stoked. After his success in Formula V, he coughed up $30,000, which is about $200,000 in today's money, for a drive in Formula 2. How did he get this money? Simple. He borrowed it through his estranged family's connections without their permission. Ooh, what a rebel. Screw you, mommy, and screw you too, daddy. Like I said, the man wouldn't let anything get in the way of his goals. Paying for a seat on a race team was pretty common back in the day, so it wasn't weird to see some rando rich kid on March Racing's F2 roster for the 1972 season. What wasn't as common back in the day was finding out that that rando rich kid could drive. The March team was surprised AF and so impressed that they bumped Niki up to their Formula One team. You guys, Niki made it to Formula One astonishingly quickly, and he did pretty good in his first season. But he was held back by the small team's less than competitive cars. It's a story as old as time. So Niki moved on to the legendary British Racing Motors, or BRM. You ever heard of it? The only problem is, by the time that he got there, the legend had sort of dried up. BRM couldn't compete with the Ford-powered Lotuses and Tyrrells of the day, but Niki fought hard behind the wheel. His skills were obvious enough. This one Italian guy named Enzo Ferrari took notice. He was like, "Get me some gabagool, and then find out that young man's name." Niki was scooped up by none other than Scuderia Ferrari for the 1974 Formula One season. Little Niki Lauda, a boy who grew up watching F1 legends like Juan Manuel Fangio win for Ferrari. Now it was his turn, and he didn't have to pay for the drive. They paid him. Niki spent 1974 proving he was much more than a cash cow, because cows can't even take 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. Niki Lauda did. Cows don't even know how to drive. So now we're in 1975. Later in life, Niki would call this his dream year. Probably because it was the first time that he won a Formula One championship, which, yeah, I mean, that seems like a pretty good year. But it wasn't suddenly easy because he was in a Ferrari. Much of Niki's success came from his dedicated work with Ferrari engineers to improve his car. Now, that's pretty common in F1 now, but it really wasn't a thing in those days. The guys would show up half drunk, smoke some cigarettes, hop in the car, and go. But Niki was cut from a different cloth. He didn't just want to be on top, he needed to be on top. And as he'd already established by this point, he'd fight until he got there. So when he got back from his first preseason test in the Ferrari 312, he told Enzo Ferrari, a famously not very chill dude, that his car was, quote, a piece of shit. Then he said that he wanted to work with the engineers to make it the opposite of a piece of shit. You know, hot piss. And the crazy thing is that he actually did it. This is when Niki Lauda earned the nicer of his two nicknames. They called him the computer because he was a calculating genius. Remember, no driver had really worked with the engineers on a car before. Side note, his other nickname was the rat because he had buck teeth and he looked like a rat. You think this bothers me? You call me the rat because of the way I look? It's from Drive. The product of the computer's work with Ferrari engineers was nothing less than the company's return to Formula One glory after a very disappointing decade. This is the Ferrari 312T. This car and its 500 horsepower, 3-liter, naturally aspirated flat 12 busted the prancing horse out of the loser's stable and into the winner's stable. It was so freaking good that it dominated F1 until like 1981. Can you imagine a 6-year-old car busting it up in F1 today? The 312T is the single most successful car in the history of the sport. And it sounds pretty good too. The world was Niki Lauda's oyster and the Ferrari 312T was its pearl. Niki won 5 out of 14 races in 1975, and by the end of the season, he was 20 points ahead of the next driver in the paddock. 20 points! So like I said earlier, he nabbed his first world championship title that year. Through sheer force of will, Niki achieved his boyhood dream. Was he stoked? Yeah. But celebration, sentimentality, laughing, those things weren't Niki's style. He told the press he traded his useless championship trophy for some free car washes, which is hilarious. He probably didn't even eat a bunch of chili out of it, which is definitely one of the first things that I would do. But whether he showed it or not, the determined Austrian was on top of the world. But little did he know, what happened next season would almost take him out of it. Niki started the 1976 season as F1's most dominant driver. He was fast, confident, thriving. Now that all changed going into the 10th race of the season. Now this race had him spooked. It was the German Grand Prix set to run on the Nurburgring Nordschleife, a track that was literally designed to be as difficult as possible. It was narrower than some city streets, 14 miles long, and a huge portion of its 76 curves carved through thick, spooky German woods in the Eifel Mountains. You've heard of the Black Forest. Well, this is the Green Hell. This is a track so special that we made an entire video about it. I'll put the link down below. Now, if someone were to crash in the backwoods of the ring, it would take ages for medics to arrive. Not to mention that there's basically zero runoff space, so an off was an almost guaranteed crash into the guard wall. And because of all those things, plus a lack of fire marshals and a lack of safety equipment, Niki wasn't feeling it today. I mean, the track was designed to challenge the race cars of 1927. Things got a lot faster in the past 49 years. And to be honest, running F1 on that track at that time was insane. And Niki, he knew that. So a week before the race, he called on his fellow drivers to boycott, but it didn't work. The majority of the drivers wanted to go ahead with the race. Now, I found a quote from Niki talking about this, and he said, "Some of them wanted to seem brave. Others were simply too stupid to know what they were doing. I steeled myself to drive, although my brain kept telling me it was sheer stupidity." Now, Niki was a bit cold and maybe a bit full of himself, but the fact that he tried to organize a boycott meant that he cared about his fellow drivers. I mean, everyone wants a coworker that doesn't want them to die, right? And if you think that your coworkers want you to die, you either need to start acting right or you need to get a new job. So the race starts in the rain. Here we go. Everybody except for one dude, Jochen Mass, started on rain tires. And as the race began, the sun came up and dried up the track, the parts not shaded by the forest. Now, Mass took an early lead, which motivated the other drivers to pit and swap their tires back to slicks, including Niki. But remember the woods I was talking about? There were shaded spots all over the track, still cold and damp because the sun didn't reach them. On the second lap of the race, Niki's left rear tire clipped the curbing at 174 miles per hour, sending him into a slide. Now, this must have been a terrifying moment. I mean, Niki was already basically convinced that someone was gonna die on that track, and now he's sliding at over 170 miles per hour. He counter-steered instantly, but cold slicks on a damp track, plus all that momentum, I mean, there's not a lot of traction going on. Niki's car ran through a restraining fence, which tore off his helmet, then slammed hard into an embankment at more than 100 miles per hour. The fuel tank ruptured, and the car turned into a fireball. Then, the flaming wreckage rolled back onto the narrow track. The guy behind Niki avoided hitting him, but the driver behind him couldn't. He careened directly into Niki's burning Ferrari, which triggered a second explosion. Now, like I said before, emergency response was dangerously slow at the Nurburgring. Things were looking really bad. Now, fortunately for Niki, his fellow drivers came to the rescue. Brett Lunger, the guy who hit Niki, leapt out of his car and pulled him from the wreckage. Another driver, Hans Stuck, stopped his car and flagged down an ambulance. He convinced the emergency crew to break protocol and drive against traffic to get to Niki quicker, maybe saving his life. But the horrifying truth is that Niki sat directly in the center of an 800-degree gasoline-fueled bonfire for an agonizing 55 seconds. It was a miracle that he didn't die instantly. Would he survive his injuries? It really did not seem likely. But he did, which is unbelievable. I mean, how does a regular person survive something like this? Niki was flown to the hospital where he hovered just above the brink of death, wrapped in bandages from head to toe. He remembered a Catholic priest giving him his last rites, which made him angry and motivated him to fight harder for his life. In the wreck, he'd inhaled a toxic cocktail of poisonous gases that greatly damaged his lungs and sustained severe burns on his face, head, and hands that scarred him for the rest of his life. He had to have reconstructive surgery just to get his eyelids to work properly again. Back on the day of the wreck, officials resumed the race, and Niki's rival, James Hunt, took the checkered flag. This was the last F1 flag flown on the original Nürburgring, and for good reason. Officials decided that maybe that track was a bit too dangerous after all. A new, shorter, infinitely safer Grand Prix circuit was built on the south end of the old track in 1983, but really wasn't used in F1 until the mid-90s. Now, after literally being scarred for life by his horrific wreck at the Nürburgring, you might think retirement was on Niki's mind. Nope. He was like, I'm not done yet. He fought to be a race car driver and he made it. He fought for his life and he made it. And he wasn't done fighting for another Formula One championship. Niki Lauda was determined to be the best or die trying. So just 39 days after his wreck, Niki was back on a racetrack, which isn't just insane, it seems medically inadvisable. And I'm sure he was advised by medicals not to do it. Now, I'd love to tell you that despite missing 2 races while he was in the hospital, that he scored enough points to win the 1976 Formula One championship. That's not true. Niki lost the 76 championship by a single point. And that's after he bowed out of a 3rd race, the Japanese Grand Prix, because of bad weather. When his team manager asked if he wanted to claim it as a technical failure to save face, Niki said, "My life is worth more than the title," which is sick. Now, at this point in his life, one fight wasn't enough for Niki. That wreck at the ring could have been avoided. Now he was determined to make sure something like that would never happen again. He became an outspoken advocate for safety in Formula One. In a 1977 interview, Niki said, "Some of the Grand Prix circuits we drivers are asked to race on do not fulfill the most primitive safety requirements." He also said someone besides race organizers who had tons of money in the game should be in charge of deciding whether to call off a race. Danger was, still is, and will always be a part of racing. Niki knew that. It's part of what attracted him to it. But safety reform was desperately needed. Now, if multiple explosions hadn't forced Niki to chill for a month, he would have easily taken that 76 championship. So instead, he easily took the 77 championship. Too easy. The Ferrari 312T was too good. There wasn't enough fight, so Niki left Ferrari for Brabham F1. He only lasted 2 seasons there and decided to retire suddenly during a practice session in 1979, stating that he had no more desire to, quote, continue the silliness of driving around in circles, which is a perfectly Niki Lauda way to quit something. But he couldn't stay out of the driver's seat. He came out of retirement in 1982 to join McLaren, and in 1984 he won his 3rd championship. The following season was kind of a bust, so Niki decided to hang up his infamous red Marlboro helmet for good, choosing the totally normal 2nd career of running his own airline, Lauda Air. But if you think that Niki Lauda could stay away from Formula 1 forever, you're dead wrong, pal. You idiot. Haha. Niki returned in 1993, this time in a managerial position at Ferrari. Little did he know that the next year something terrible would happen, calling him back to a familiar fight. Formula 1 legend Ayrton Senna died tragically in a wreck at the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix. So did rookie Roland Ratzenberger. In response, Niki and a number of other drivers and officials re-established F1's long-dormant drivers' union. They fought hard for safety reforms, and thanks to them, major accidents in Formula 1 steadily declined. In fact, only one person, Jules Bianchi, has died in the last 27 years of F1. This is Niki Lauda's legacy. Now, it's impossible to forget what a determined, intense, calculating driver he was. He's gone down in history as one of the greats behind the wheel, but winning simply doesn't compare to saving lives, especially if you're trading your useless trophies for car wash tokens.
Hey docs, stop wearing layers upon layers of Yoda's Tacos t-shirts this winter. Just buy the all-new Yoda's Tacos hoodie and sweatpants. They're exactly like the shirt, except thicker and with the hood and a fun drawstring and pants. Get yours today at donut.media.com. Don't be a chilly Billy, be a warm Norm.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video and everything else on Donut Media. I really love this story. There's a really good movie about it. It's called Rush. You've probably seen it if you're watching this. Hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss anything. Hit that like button. It really helps us out in the algorithm. We have a ton of merch. We're dropping new thing every week. I'm really excited about it. We're really upping our merch game. Go to donutmedia.com. Check some of that out. Get on our mailing list so you don't miss anything and you get discounts. We have a point system now, like CVS. Follow me on social media at James Pumphrey. I love you.